This
is the
conference
newest
will now
form.
be recorded.
This form has been replaced. If you went to the other, if you would access the form before last Friday, then you may not have the most corrected form. We had some issues with that, and we had to get those fixed. So, but the new form is out there. With questions, this is probably the one webinar that is a little more interactive than others, just because there's probably going to be a lot of questions. If you have questions, just put them in the chat box. Jan's going to help me to follow these along so we can get those as we go along. As a reminder, have everybody log in. I see that some folks know the drill, but we need your name and the agency that you're with. This webinar is scheduled for an hour and a half. It may take longer depending on the questions. So at 3 o'clock, we'll reassess and see where we are. But as with any other call, if at the end, we'll stay on a little bit longer to answer any questions. So with that said, let's get started. Now, what I'm going to do today is go through the form itself, just go all the way down it so that you all can see the many different functions. Now, this is a macro spreadsheet, which means it's got a lot of calculations and formulas in it and protected fields and a lot of stuff you won't even see. As a result, it's a little quirky, and I'll show you how to get around that. The other thing is this form allows for a lot of flexibility when you're entering specific data, so I will go over that as we move along the form. And also, this form does not build your budget for you. It wasn't designed that way. We've got so many variables in it, and there's just so many different situations that agencies use to actually develop their budget. So this form's not going to develop your budget. You might have to do that before you start entering data. And this will make sense again once I start going through this. So the first thing I want to show you is we've got instructions, and you see all the different tabs at the bottom. The instructions are quite lengthy. This was done on purpose, and that's because we wanted to give you, the user, all the information you would need to enter information in each of the cells. If you are applying for a VOCA grant and you're requesting match waiver, we've got some specific instructions for you on that. Budget year one, that's your actual budget form. Budget summary, the system will put all the information that is needed for this form so you don't have to do any data entry. If you are asking for a VOCA grant with a match waiver, there is a different budget summary for you. We have the link to the match calculator. We have information on entering in-kind match. If your agency is requesting the 10% de minimis indirect cost rate, there's a calculator here. We'll discuss that. There's a little more information on the 10% indirect cost rate. And then we've given you just some sample budgets down here at the end of the document. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Oh, one thing, if you're not requesting VOCA match, then disregard the summary. If you're not asking for the 10% de minimis cost, disregard that form. If you do pull them up, you'll see that information has been populated into cells, but if you're not using either one of those, then just disregard it. So let's just go to budget year one. So your name, your agency, if it's a different funding source, it's a drop-down list. If you have a project title, you can put it there. The beginning and end date for the grant, and for these grants, it's going to be the same. It's going to be July 1, 2020. And It ends June 30th, 2021. Sorry about that. For each grant that you're submitting, you have to do a different budget. So what you'll need to do is you'll need to download this form off of the health department website, save it, work on it, save it, and then upload it into GAM. So let's go to personnel. And you'll see that mostly the information that you're going to be entering, the information that's going across here, is going to be the same as we move along, mostly. Of course, some of this stuff will change based on what type of expense you're requesting. So I'm going to just put some data in here to show it. First thing I want you to see is that each section has where you can add another row or you can delete it. So to add, you just simply click on it. But if you wanted to delete something, then you have to have the cursor on the row you want to delete and then hit delete. So I'm going to just put a name in here. And then the position, let's just call this social worker. Now, when you go to enter information on what their payroll cost is, you're either going to put what their total annual salary is or their hourly rate. So for this one, I'm just going to do their salary. The next one is the drop-down list. So you have to tell the system whether it's hourly or salary. So this one is salary. This all has to do with calculations. Hours worked. Typically, a full-time employee works 20,080 hours. Now, one thing about this is the form does not distinguish between full-time and part-time or exempt or non-exempt. It doesn't do that. That's why it's important to put the total number of hours worked. The next cell is where you're going to put what percentage they are in the grant. And in this particular grant, I'm going to put 50%. This is the total. It's going to calculate for you the total project cost. The next section is where you indicate match. Now, one of the difference this year is the OAIV office is not requiring that agencies match each line item all the way down. So if let's say it's a vocal grant and it's 80-20, you don't have to do that all the way down the grant. You can actually put in here how much you're going to use for cash match or in-kind match in this particular category, whether it's salaries or commodities. You will have that ability to do that. You must know, though, at the end, once everything is entered, if the grant requires an 80-20 match, then your budget has to reflect that. And I'm going to scroll down the form really quick so you can see where, you can see at the bottom of the form, you'll have the actual dollars. Now, let's flip over real quick to the budget summary. And the budget summary is going to show you whether the total grant funds, then your total right here would be the match. I haven't entered anything, so it's showing up 0. And then it would be 100%. So I'll be moving around just a little bit just for demonstration purposes. I'm going to go back up to the top. So let's say that this particular person, they're in the grant at 50%. And we already know that we use 10% of their, 10% would be $1,700 for the match. And then the system will calculate it. This column at the very end, this lets you know what the actual grant dollars are, whether it's federal or state. And as a reminder, the domestic violence grant is the only state fund. Okay? Now let's go back and let's enter another employee. She's going to be the case manager. Or we can do this. We can do victim assistance coordinator. And we're going to put her in here as, we're going to put her hourly rate so you can see how this looks. So her hourly rate is 15. Her hourly rate is $15. We have to indicate whether it's hourly or salary. And for this particular person, I'm going to say this person is part-time. So we know they're not going to work 2,080 hours. They're going to work 1,000 and something hours. And we're going to say that this person is in the grant at 100%. That's the total project cost. And we're also going to say that, just for demonstration purposes, that $1,000, oh no, let's don't do that. That might be confusing. Let's just say that $1,000 is used as cash match. So the total grant dollars will be $1,460. Now, if you're going to make a mistake on this, this is where you might do it. You see, I've got salary at 35, but let's say I selected hourly, and you see what kind of salary they've got over here. So if you see something crazy like that, then you know what's going on. And the same thing here, if we change them to salary. So we know that they're going to make more than $7.50. Okay? This figure right here for for the hourly rate is just that hourly rate. It's not their total salary. Sometimes people do that. And when you do that, then you come up with something crazy. So remember, this just needs to be the hourly rate. This is the total salary up here. Okay? Now, I also want to demonstrate if you use volunteers for in-kind match. Volunteers are going to go up under personnel. So you just can put volunteers and the position volunteers. And there's an hourly rate out there that's acceptable for volunteer hours. It's something weird. I don't know what it is, so I'm going to make it up. I'm going to do something like $11.62. They are hourly. Now, when you get ready to enter this, you're already going to know how many total hours that you have for your volunteers. So let's say that your volunteers logged in 3,000 hours. And for this particular purpose, we're going to say that we have them at 100%. And you see what their cost is. What the cost is there. Remember, this is in kind, so you've got to go over here. We're going to put the full amount under in kind. So if you come over here to this last, you see you're not going to be getting any funds because it's all under in kind. So that should be zero for any, if it's just strictly in kind, then that will always be zero. Any questions? Okay. So then this form does something a little bit different. It gives you the narrative justification right here in the form. This is one of the quirks with the form, and that is this cell that you're looking at right here, it's limited on how much information you can put in there. But we have this right here, add additional narrative. And see, we've got another block. And we can even do it again, add additional narrative. Now, a lot of times the information on personnel, sometimes it could get, two or three, four sentences. So what we're telling folks is for each employee that you have to provide a justification, is go ahead and add additional spaces for each section. One good thing about this form is you can cut and paste. So if you are using a lot of the same data in your budget narrative that you used last year, you can go to that form and paste it or copy it and then paste it in here. So I'm just going to demonstrate that for you too. Whoops. I'm just pulling up some narrative out of the RFP just for demonstration purposes. When you go to the box, you have to be sure and double click, and you see the cursor there, it's blinking. That's got to be happening. And then you paste. There it is. So let's say that this was for Mary Tell. You will need to refer to the RFP to see what it's telling you, what you need to include in your budget narrative. So I'm not really going to go into a lot of that. So just be sure to go to the RFP. Now I'm going to show you something else. I'm not real sure what the word limits are on this, so we really just have to use the visual of the size of the block. So if you go over here, let me pull up some more data. So if I go over here, which I don't know, a justification can get lengthy. Like if you try to put all of your staff in that one box, it won't happen. So it can get lengthy. So I cut and pasted that big old lengthy section. Now I can see it right now on the form, but if I get out of the cell, which I will eventually do, this is all I can see, and this is all that's going to print. So if you've got something that's really lengthy, watch it when you're entering it. And see now, let's see if I can get back to it. I can, and kind of cut some of that out of there, and then paste it in a new block. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? This is one of those quirky things with this form. So just remember, although you can cut and paste all kind of information into the cell, you're not going to be able to see it unless you actually click into the cell. But that presents a problem because when you go to print it, you can't see that information. The cell is not going to print more than what you see in the cell. Okay, so now we're going to move on to fringe if there's no questions. And Jan's going to help me watch for questions. So fringe is broken down into payroll taxes and fringe benefits. And we had to do this because there's so many variables involved. So the first thing I want to do is indicate. And in payroll taxes, basically, we're only going to have two things. We're going to have FICA and we're going to have unemployment. Under the description, this is where I'm going to put the employee's name and what the OAIV office has asked, that whatever lineup you have right here for staff, and I'm just going to copy this and paste it. This may not work because I don't have an extra cell. No, okay. So I have to add another line. Let me go back up here. And I can cut and paste it. It's duplicating it there, but that's okay. So they want you to line them up the same way. So the type of benefit here is going to be FICA, the cost base. This is important to notice because you're going to see all throughout the form cost base and rate. So in this particular situation, we can do a couple of things. The cost base is either going to be what your total project is or what your total federal funds, state funds are. And this is just a little flexibility for you. But whichever one you choose, then you have to be careful of what percentage that you use. So if you decide to use as your cost the total project, then you have to use the percentages here. If, however, you use this as your cost base, then your percentage is going to always be 100%. And the reason is because this figure already has got this calculated in it. And I'll just kind of demonstrate to you what this is going to look like. And I'm going to add this again, and I'm going to add Mary again. I'm going to add Mary again so you can see what I'm talking about. So for Mary, if I use for her cost base, see, this is the other thing about this form, it's just scrolling over. So if I use this for the cost base, 15750, this is FICA. The standard rate is 0.0765. The percent of time, remember, if you use the federal dollars that's already calculated, you use 100%, and then it will calculate it here for you. Let's go and show, just so you can see. And this is just flexibility in the form for you. So if we use her cost base as this, 1750, then we have to put in, okay, and then the rate is still 0.765. Then we have to use what percentage she is in the grant up here. I tell you, I think what I'm going to do is just delete some of this narrative so that we can bounce around the form a little bit easier. And she's in the grant at 50%. Something didn't work. Oh, because of the cash match. Nope. I've got it wrong. Nope. Sorry, guys. This should have worked. Okay, this is just me doing something wrong, and I can't figure out what it is right now. If it's okay with y'all, I'm going to go with Susie. Her total cost base is 1560. And she's in the grant at 100%. And this particular situation, because we've got match, you see that that is different. What typically happens is if you have match, then you need to show those salaries also. I mean, you need to show if you've got if you've taken out because you're showing your cash as in kind, excuse me, you're showing salary as cash match. Woo, this is getting to be a tongue twister. Then you would want to show it here as well. So for the demonstrations of this, you really just want to use these figures right here. If you're using any part of the salary as cash match, that's what you want to use. So I want to demonstrate something else for you. If all of your staff is at the same cycle rate of the regular cycle rate, then you can do something different. You can put over here, you can just do employees, FICA, indicated as FICA. Your cost base is going to be your total project cost, which is 67960. Whoops. You can go ahead and use 100%, and there's your FICA rate for this amount right here. Okay? And that way you don't have to list it all because everybody has the same FICA rate. Now, some of you may have different FICA rates because of the tax deferred benefit, and an employee may have health insurance. And so we'll just use Mary as an example. We'll just do this. Let's see. And we're going to say that Mary's FICA rate is actually 7.24%. Put it in at 100%, and there's the FICA rate. Some agencies have this. So if your agency has a different tax rate because of deferred costs, then you need to show this. You need to list your employees individually. You don't need to lump them together because the rates are different. Then you need to explain down here in the payroll taxes narrative part of why this figure is different. Everybody understand that? Any questions? Okay. Wouldn't you use annual salary as base of using 50%? Yes, Rhonda, I think that was my mistake. Let's go plug that in there. Well, I'm not sure what problems I'm having today with cost base, but the best thing, it's always going to be right if you use the total project cost at 100%. Okay? Sorry about that, guys. I know it's a little confusing. If an agency has a total of 3 employees and the rate of FICA is the same, we enter it once. Yes, you can do that. Yep. Now, let's look at some other types of taxes, which is unemployment. So I'm going to put Mary and Susie. Again, they're the same lineup. They're going to be unemployment taxes and unemployment taxes. Now, give me a second to scroll back. We're getting some feedback. Someone probably has their phone on. Let's see. Jennifer, we need you to mute if that's okay. Okay. So let me just switch back to this form and let me see where, because it's in here about the taxes, the payroll taxes. It explains to you here which the simplest option that does not require any manual calculation is to enter the calculated total project cost, column H, for the individual salary for the cost base, and then enter 100% in the percent of time. Okay, so the instructions do cover that. It might be because I am trying to rush through this that I can't get it right, but it's all been tested, and it's actually easier than the way I presented it. Now let's talk about unemployment for a little bit. Unemployment taxes. Now this is me saying that unemployment taxes is usually a very small amount, something like 0.0004% or something like that. So I'm going to demonstrate that. So you see that comes out to something like $7. So the easiest thing to do with your unemployment taxes is just to do, again, employee, unemployment, and then here you click it off. You just go to 6.9, that figure, that total project figure, put in that cost rate at 100%, and you're showing something like $27. This may not be an exact amount, but it's so few dollars and cents that going this way, using unemployment taxes as a lump sum type of entry and coming up with such a small figure. So if that's even off 50 cents, it's not going to make a big difference. Does everybody understand that? Okay. I'm just checking for some more questions. Okay. So the next thing is we'll add benefits. And let me just add a couple of lines here. So again, I'm going to want Mary and Susie in the same lineup. So you're going to indicate what type. You're going to have health, vision, life, disability, dental, retirement, combination, and other. Now, the combination is for those agencies that have these benefits through one vendor and they just get one lump sum cost. And so if that's the case, you can click combination. The cost base is going to be monthly. That's usually how you pay it. And let's say for this example, it's going to be $560. The percent of time is going to be, she's in the grant at 50%, so it's going to be 50%. And then it calculates it over here for you. Okay. In your narrative section, you're going to describe what combination means. Let's say that Susie's only doing vision. Okay, that's going to be monthly. That's $25. And she's in the grant at 100%. So there's your calculation. Now, some agencies, they have new positions that's been created, or they have a position that they know is going to be vacant when the grant starts. And then especially for those new positions, when you have to get them hired, some benefit policies say they have to be working for you for 4 months before they're eligible for anything. Because this calculation is based on monthly, and if you put that new employee in there for monthly, and you know it's going to be 4 months before they are eligible for that amount, then it's going to mess up your total project cost. So there's a way to get around that. So let's say, we're going to use Mary again. She's going to get, let's just do health just for purposes. What we're going to do is we're going to put this as annual. So I'm just doing this at the top of my head, but let's say that the annual rate for health insurance is $500, but we know that she is not going to be eligible for the first 4 months. So her rate is going to be $4,000. And she's in the grant at 50%. And then it's going to calculate it for us. So just to kind of recap that, what you do for someone who's going to work less than 12 months in that grant period, if you know about it, you figure out what their cost is going to be annually, and then it'll give you that amount all the way across. Any questions on that? Okay. So we do have, when you go under type, there is the provision for other. So this could be like a cancer policy if your agency provides that. This is, again, just only those benefits that the agency pays for. Right now, I can't think of another type, but that would be an example of other. And you would just describe all of that down here. Okay, so we're going to move on to travel. Any questions? Okay, so the travel in-state and travel out-of-state basically works the very same way. I'm going to add some stuff here. There's flexibility in the form, whether it's a conference or whether it's just regular mileage. So one thing about conferences, though, all of the expenses are broken down, so you have to enter that each time, which really is no different than if you're working with a spreadsheet, because you've got to figure out how much each cost is. But let's say, moving on to the example, that this is local travel, and then it asks for the conference or location or coverage area. So let's say that your social worker is traveling throughout your service area. So you can do this service area. And you know, your service area is already going to be defined in your grant, but under the narrative, you might want to include that again. This is going to be just the mileage, and the rate is 0.575. I don't know really what it is right now. So it says up here, if the item is mileage, you can leave number of staff blank. It's not using that to calculate. And a lot of times agencies will, there's 3 or 4 people in that grant that do the local travel. You're going to explain in your narrative who's all doing that local travel and for what purpose. So generally what happens is an agency will do their computation based on the total number of miles they think that all of the staff in the grant are going to provide. So let's say, for example, that throughout the grant period, they're going to travel 8,000 miles. And there is there's your calculation. Okay. If I'd entered 3 staff, it's not going to do anything. But if I enter 3 staff and no miles, it's not going to give me anything. Okay. So when it comes to mileage, this number is not important. This is the number that's important. Okay. So for this purpose, I'm going to put conference. One thing that OAIV has allowed for this year is the fact that you know that you want to send some staff to some training, but right now when you're filling out the grant, you're not really sure what it is, but you kind of have an idea. So what you do is you just put to be announced or to be determined. Okay. And you can put in the narrative which conference you think you're going to send them to, or the type of conference you're considering, you know, researching to send the particular staff to. So there might be some mileage involved in that. So let's say that there is. Let's say that you're sending 3 staff, but you know that their total mileage isn't going to be more than 450 miles. Okay, that's your mileage. To finish completing, you know, this for this particular conference, you got to come down and do it for everything. This is lodging. Let's say lodging is $100. You're sending 3 staff. They're going to be there for 2 nights, and there's your cost. Let's do it again. 4. For meals. Meals are going to be $40. 3 staff. It's going to be 3 days, and there's your meal cost. Sometimes there's other costs associated with state employees are required to do car rentals. That's where that goes. And I have forgotten where registration goes, so I've got to go back over here and look myself. Oh, this is a note for those who help clients with travel expenses. Any client transportation for bus tickets, gas cards, vouchers, etc., are included in the substance loan grants and budget category, and I'll show that to you later. can't think of another. I thought maybe it was here, but it's not. Another the registration for conferences, and you know what? That's what I was looking for. I can't remember where that goes. Let me look real quick. It does go in a particular area. Hold on, I'm going to have to write myself a note so I don't forget. Jan, do you by chance remember where that goes? Okay, we'll move on. Let's see. Let's see what questions we have. Bear with me while I. Can you maximize the screen? I can, but it will. Oh, you know what? Let's see. There, I think that helps. So the question is, some of our employee benefits are pre-tax, therefore the total project cost for the salary will not be the salary amount used to calculate taxes. How do you report the difference on the form? You have to you have to you have to enter each individual separately, and you have to include their cost rate. You indicate well, where it is it? You indicate that up here, whatever their tax rate is. Then you explain that in the narrative form. Wouldn't you use that? Okay. Oh, let's see. Does accrued paid leave go under other? Rhonda, are you asking if they're taking, if they're, I'm not sure I understand that, but my first reaction is no. And I guess you're talking about benefits. Yeah. That would be no. So Dorothy is saying, so do you have to put each benefit in a separate line? The easiest way to do that, yes. So if they've got FICA, you put that in a separate line. They've got unemployment. Oh, you're talking about benefits. Sorry. Yes. If your agency is billed separately for health, billed separately for dental, then you'll need to indicate that. If you are billed in a lump sum for all of that, then you only need to select combination. Rhonda, the grants don't track where you earn leave. That's something that you do internally. It's not on this form. So you don't track that as a benefit on this. Any leave though would show up on your payroll stub. Let's see if item. I think I got everything under here. We'll go back to the purpose of travel. Sometimes agencies like to keep their local travel separate from their conference, obviously, but also the local travel separate from meetings. Some agencies can opt to do that. Like some agencies have to travel to Jackson once a month for meetings. Um, but that's really up to your agency. If you want to just include all of that as mileage, then you can. Under local, it's got local travel, but you can include all of that. Basically, local does mean state or your service area. Okay, so if we go to out of state travel, we just add a couple here. Let me just go back up. Let's say too that you've got one conference you're not sure where you're going to send folks to, but you do have another conference that you know you're going to send a couple of people to. You could do something like this conference. You can put trauma, the trauma conference in Jackson. And this is a different conference, so you would fill out everything, include everything for this, and you would go down and put trauma conference. So your out-of-state travel is going to be conference or meeting. Sometimes people will travel in their own vehicle or a rented vehicle, and this would be mileage. So you've got your conference here. Again, if you know where it's going to be, you can indicate it. If not, you put to be determined. And then here are all the different items that we've included. Mileage, airfare, airport parking, baggage, ground transportation, lodging, and meals. So let's look at airfare. Okay, the rate is 500. Number of staff attending is 2. And to make this calculate right, you're going to have to put 2. You're going to have to put 1 day. See, because you've got 2 staff at 500. You want that total to be 1,000. This wouldn't necessarily be the same for lodging, right? Because the cost would save $100. You've got 2 staff, and they're going to be there for 2 nights. So you come up with the right amount. You need to explain everything in the narrative. I think when you first use this form, it may seem like a little bit of a challenge, but once you use it and get familiar with it, then you'll feel more comfortable with how it works. I want to show you where you might make a mistake. Let's see. If you come up here and you forgot to put, let's see, I think it's here. If you forgot to put the number of staff here, see, I didn't put it, but I put number of nights, it's not going to calculate. So you may go, oh, it's not working right. Well, you got to go back, make sure you put in all of the different components. Okay, any other questions? I'll try to stay on top of the questions before we move on to contractual. Okay, so for contractual and commodities, for the most part, OAIV wants to know what your total budget expense is, and then what percentage is in this particular grant. And if you're wondering why they want to know that, that's because you may have your utilities for your agency in 2 or 3 different grants. So we'll use that for an example. Let me just go ahead and put a couple more of these here. So let's say that this is asking for purpose. And some of the things that we've identified is something like program operations. It could be shelter operations, or it could be client services. You'll have to, you might come up with something a little more descriptive, but for purpose, this, like if you're going to do utilities, your purpose, I guess you could put utilities, but the description here would be, and you wouldn't want to put utilities because or you could, and you could explain in your contractual narrative what it is, but utility means the power bill, the water bill, stuff like that. So let's say that it's the power bill. Well, what about electricity expenses? Something like that. What's your cost base? This is usually going to be per month. The rate, you're going to know this just based on your historical use. So let's say your rate is $525 a month. You have to put the quantity in here, which for this situation, because it's based on per month, that's going to be 12 months. So that's what your total agency budget should look like. And for this particular grant, you're only doing 80%. You would do the same thing for electricity and those other types of expenses. But there was something else I wanted to say about this. Let's go back and look at the instructions. Oh, yeah, rent. That's what I was looking at. Okay, so this is rent, contracts, utilities, repair and maintenance, professional fees, membership dues, telephone, cable, all of those types of expenses. So, so I'm going to put rent here per month. Let's say it's $1,200. It's for 12 months, and that's your rent. Now, let's say that you are using another office space that you have for in-kind. So we could do, program operations, rent per month. And based on the letter that you have from the person donating this expense to you, that the rate is $500 a month for 12 months. It's $6,000. And let's say for this grant that you use this off-site office exclusively for the services in this grant. So let's go ahead and put 100%. That could change. Then what you want to do is you want to go over here. Remember, for in-kind, you got to enter it. And we're going to enter it there. Okay? And something happened. Nope, there it is. It should be 0. Now, your project narrative. Your project narrative should explain what all this is. Where this office is located, what services are coming out of it, who are you working with for this to be donated, unless it's an anonymous donor. Okay? Any questions? This is so if you've got any contract, a counseling service or something like that. So the purpose would be counseling services, client services. This would be counseling. Now, this may not necessarily be per month. This might be per unit or per hour. Let's just do per unit. And so you're contracting with a counseling center. They're going to charge you $100 a session. And you have determined that there are going to be 1,500 counseling sessions throughout the entire, well, no, we can't do that. There's going to be 100 counseling sessions throughout the year. Okay? And for this particular grant, you're only going to be doing 50%. And then there's your total. Okay. Again, all of this is going to be described in the narrative. The contractual, you're going to, need to add some other spaces to explain all of this. So let's go to commodity. So commodity works the same as contractual did with the cost base, rate, quantity, and the total budget. So the program operation is, let's say it's office supplies, your cost base, and usually you're going to know this per month. You do not have to list cost for pens, cost for paper, cost for staples. You can do that in a lump sum and then just kind of say in your narrative what all this includes. So, from historical experience, you usually spend about $150 on office supplies for 12 months. That's your budget. And for this particular budget, you're only going to be asking for 25% of that for the year. And there's your total. If you're a shelter, you're probably going to have shelter supplies. You're going to do this per month. Now, I'm going to make this figure kind of high just so I can get the expenses up on this grant to show you match stuff. So let's say that the rate is 500. Well, let's make it more than that. Let's say that it's 1,500 a month, 12 months, and that's the cost. And for this grant, it's 80%. Then you'll explain down here what all that is. Let's go back and let's look at commodities and what else does it include. It could include food also for shelters. Remember, commodities are those things that are consumable. You can always go back to the RFP and it will explain in there all of the eligible expenses for not only the grant, but just what are even considered eligible through OAIV. You might have folks who donate a lot for you. They donate supplies, they donate Christmas toys and stuff like that. So you could do this. You could do it per month. It depends on how you track it. But again, this is donations. This is going to be an in-kind match. And you may know through historical experience that you get about $250 of value of stuff donated, clothing, food, Christmas, stuff like that. And for this grant, we're just going to show 80%. And we know that the in-kind will be $2,400. And you will explain what makes all of this up down here in your narrative. Now I'm just going to go down here and take a look at what's going on with my total budget, just so I can have an idea, and I want to look at my budget summary. So as I've entered stuff, it populated it here. It's also used my match, and it's given me the percentage. And let's say for example, this grant is an 80-20. See, I'm off, but I'm just checking myself. But at the end, it should show 80, 20, and then 100. Okay, so let's go back up here. Now we're going to go to capital outlay. And really the only thing that OAIV is paying for in terms of capital outlay is equipment. Now, there is there's a policy out there that anything over or under 5,000 is not considered equipment, but a supply. But for OAIV purposes, anything that's an equipment, they want you to put it here. So the purpose would be shelter operations. The description would be desktop. The cost base would be per unit. The rate is going to be $800, and we're actually buying 2 for this program. And for this particular grant, it's going to pay at 100%. Okay? Other than equipment, you really shouldn't show anything. The narrative needs to explain who's getting the equipment, you know, what position, if you're designating this to a staff, or it could be that you're buying a computer for clients to use. But you need to explain that, where it's going to be located, who's going to be using it. Subsidies, loans, and grants. There's basically 2 things that go here. And one is those agencies that actually do subawards. Well, actually, let's do this backwards. Now, I had a question, so let me go check that out real quick. So, is total budget expense for the organization as a whole, or just the one division the grant is written for? Just the one division that the grant's written for. So if you are, if your agency is a district attorney's office and your governing organization is the board of supervisors, we don't need their budget. We just need the budget for the district attorney's office. So there's only one agency I know that gets subawards. So I'm just going to do this per month. $1,000, 1 to 12, and then the percentage probably would be 100%. So I'm not going to go into all of that. The ones that get the subaward, they already know all that. All the explanation goes here. But the other would be victim assistance, and this is victim. This would be like what we call financial assistance. We're going to do this based on per month. We're going to make it $100 for 12 months, and the percentage for this grant will be 80. I'm just making that up, as y'all know. Now, victim assistance is not where you obviously just give clients money, but it's where you purchase birth certificates for them or other legal documents that cost. If they've got a job and they have to have a uniform and you don't have one in your donation closet, then you have to go purchase that for them. Those bus tickets, bus vouchers, things like that. And then you will explain all of that here. Now, OAIV does not want you to include anything under other because it should fit somewhere else. So we're getting ready to get into the indirect cost part of it. So let's go look at our budget. I might go make some adjustments just so. So I'm going to go back to my budget summary. I'm still at 6733. Let me just go make a quick change real quick. Let me just I'm just taking this out just so the budget looks closer to what. Whoop. Ooh, I don't know what I did. That looks better, I guess. I don't know. But let's say this is supposed to be 80/20. So you'll know when you're doing your budget, you might have to make adjustments because this has to equal whatever is required in the match. And some of you that get several grants know that there's a couple of grants that don't even require match. So it would be 100 and 100. Okay. So I want to show you this right now. The total direct cost that this grant is asking for the it will be $92,000. So this is the grant fund. This is the match that you have to provide, and then this is the total grant project. Indirect costs, if you ask for those, come down here. So I'm not sure how many folks will be requesting the indirect costs, but there's two types of indirect costs, and I want to go over this just for a little while. This tends to get a little complicated. But if you're a larger agency, let's say like Catholic Charities or maybe even the Board of Supervisors, which I don't know. If you're with UMC, those types of larger agencies, you most likely have what's called a federally approved rate or federally negotiated approved rate. This is assigned to you by the federal government. If you have this, and you know what I'm talking about, you just put that in there and you plug that rate in. Now, if you don't have a federally approved rate, your agency is eligible to ask for indirect costs up to 10%. But this 10% is based on a modified total direct cost. So if it starts sounding too complicated, don't worry, we'll make it easy for you. So let's say that you are an agency that does have a federally approved rate. The federal government has approved you for 11%. And right here, the system does not calculate that. You, as an agency, have to calculate that. So let's say that 11% is $12,000 of the grant, and you just put that in there. You're going to figure that out, and then your budget summary will show that. So now, instead of getting $92,000, you're going to get $104,000. In the indirect cost rate, you have to explain how you're going to use this. It becomes very important if you are going to ask for the 10% diminutive rate. Without being able to be very interactive, I don't know who all used this or who all thinking about it, or if you have used it, if you know the rules. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you, if you're going to use the 10%, there's this tab. It's got information about the indirect rate. And you notice it starts with a warning because there's lots of guidelines on this. And then if you are not sure, then it says here, agency should consider consulting a financial professional who's knowledgeable about these requirements. Now, when you are determining what the 10% is going to be based on, where is it? Based on the modified total direct cost. So when you're looking at this, and this is all in the law, and it's referenced several times, the modified total cost includes salaries, wages, fringe benefits, materials, and da-da-da-da-da. What it excludes in the calculation is equipment, capital expenditures, rental costs, travel allowances, and registrations paid for folks who attend conferences. However, if you request this 10% diminutive, then you can use it just about any kind of way you want to. So although the law says you cannot use this in the calculation, you can't use your rental cost. However, when you get your indirect cost payment, you can then use it towards the rental cost. You just can't use it in the calculation. And there is some more information here. So if you're going to use this, I tell you, really trying to encourage you to look at that. Now, if you're going to use it, then there's a form here. Whoops, there's the calculator. This calculator has taken in pretty much everything into consideration that I just indicated. So it has populated all the budget line items over here for you. You see that, and there's the 92,715.90. If we go back to the budget summary, that should be the same figure. There it is. So now we're going to go back to the calculator. The stuff in the yellow is what you have to indicate. So this is the stuff that's not going to be eligible towards your 10%. So I'm not going to toggle back and forth. So I'm just going to guess that the rental cost was $6,000. I can't remember what it was. Conference registration fees, I can't remember which category it goes in, so I'm going to leave it blank. I think equipment was $1,600. Subawards, this does not apply to most of you, but I will say that it does not count towards, or it only counts towards the first $25,000 of a subaward. We have left or added some of these other expenses, although OAIV is not going to pay for this. And there's actually some other things that aren't allowable, but OAIV doesn't pay for it anyway, but we just left some extra blanks there in case you needed to put something else in there. But you shouldn't have to, but it's there. So we know that based on what I've indicated, this is from the grant. We can't populate it because this is buried into those different rows that you've added. So that's why you've got to include it. So it's saying 7,600 is not allowed. Therefore, what is allowable to apply the 10% is 85. And here is the percentage. And it says enter this amount on the budget. So 85,110. And I'm going to go right here, and I'm going to put this is 10%. And it was I can't remember what it was, 8511. I don't remember what it was. And Under here, I have to explain how I'm going to use my indirect cost allotment when I get it. So now here's just another recap. My total project budget, 115. Let's go here and look at the budget summary. 115. This is the amount of grant award I'm going to get right here. This is the match, and that's the total. This right here is not based on match, so it's not going to be in this calculation down here. Okay, let's see if we have any other questions. Is that slot, if your agency receives vol and VOCA funding, there is where it's, I'm sorry, slot, if your agency receives vol and VOCA funding, this is where it's placed in the budget, right? I'm not sure what you're asking, Tamika. You might have to ask me again. I will say, remember that you do a separate budget for each grant. Any questions? Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about VOCA. This may not apply to everybody on the phone, but I do want to go over this before I allow people time to get off the phone or stay on for additional questions. I will find out where the registration fees go. I think it is in that instruction somewhere, but I just can't remember right now where it is. Let's see. So, if your agency is asking for a VOCA grant with matched waiver, then you need to go here. If you're not getting it, don't pay any attention to it. So those who are asking for a matched waiver, what happens is you have your total grant award amount that you're requesting. And for this example, it's right here. It's $100,000. It's going to calculate what your VOCA match is, and your match is $25,000. So this is what has to be tracked, because the budget form doesn't have a place for you to put how much is being waived. It's not in the budget form. It's all in the budget. It all happens in the budget summary. So at the very end of the day, your total project is still going to be $125,000, whether or not you use cash, in kind, or waived cash amount, because your match amount plus the waiver has to equal that $25,000. And this is what the budget summary would look like with this particular example. That's what you're requesting in VOCA dollars. This is what it's going to show on the budget form as the actual total project. This is the required total project, actual match that you provided, required match, and your waive request. Down here, for your reference, we're showing you that your total match rate is 20%, which is that $25,000 right there. Of that, you've waived 8%, and you've done cash match in or in kind on your budget form. Okay. When you do, people who are asking for the match waiver, let's see, yeah, right here, who are asking for the match waiver, know that you already have to provide a letter. And in that letter, you're going to state how much, what the dollar amount is that you're requesting to be waived. And then you also need to indicate what percentage that is. So if you're asking for $10,000 to be waived, you're going to put that in your match request letter. And of course, you've got to justify why you're asking for this and why it's needed. Then you're going to also say the 10% equals, I mean, the $10,000 equals 8% of your required match. So let's go look at the budget summary. Again, this is going to populate everything in here for you. If you're not using this, you just need to ignore it. So look at there, it came out 12 and 8. So this is what it would look like. The main thing about this is it's letting you know right here the $10,846. That's what the waiver is. So that's pretty simple. You just need to know what the waiver is. It's going to show up here. And you have to justify, in your letter, you have to provide all that information. I encourage you to read the instructions. I will tell you that we put the two budget forms together, the regular form and the VOCA OAIV match form. So there is a place here that I forgot to edit out right here. So you just need to ignore that when you're looking at it. Okay, let's see, where are we on time? And that is it. I'll be glad to go back and demonstrate anything else. We are at the 3 o'clock mark. Any questions? I know some of this gets a little confusing. Well, let's see. We've got 25 people still on the phone or on the webinar. If you need assistance, this is the email to go to. We're pretty good about responding very quickly. Well, if there are no more questions, I guess we can go ahead and call it a day, guys. The form is on the health department's website.
Sandra?
Yeah.
And the form will also be in the GAM system, correct?
No, not yet. We don't have it.
Not yet. Okay. But it will be.
No, at this point, since we got it out there,
okay.
know what? I don't really know. Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to confuse everybody, but
yeah. Okay. Well, to those that are still on the phone, we really want to thank you and tell you how much we appreciate all of your understanding with all of the webinars and emails and chemical problems we've had. We'll be so ready for next year. And also just a thanks to folks who have attended the webinars that aren't required, which this one was not required, but certainly, hopefully it was helpful.
All right, if there's no more questions, I'm going to end the call now, and everyone can send us an email at that address if you have additional questions.
Okay, thank you, Jan. I'm signing off. Thanks again to everyone else.